This is one of a series of videos on sketching trigonometric functions. This one looks at amplitude, period, and reflections. I'm going to look at them with examples. So if I've got y equals 3 cos 2x and I need to sketch it with one complete cycle. First thing I do is, what does my basic cos curve look like? Starts at the top, down, and up. From there, I look at the amplitude, which is the number in front. So my amplitude is 3. I have no vertical translation. There's nothing happening at the end of this. So that means my min of my graph will be -3 and my max will be 3. Next, I look at the number in front of the variable, in this case x, and that's my period. So my period is always 2 pi divided by whatever that number is. So that's where my 2 goes. So that would be 2 pi divided by 2 is pi. For my graph, I then divide the period by 4. So I have pi over 4. This will give me my x-axis. So I want pi on 4, 2 pi on 4, 3 pi on 4, and 4 pi on 4. 2 pi on 4 is pi on 2, 4 pi on 4 is pi. I then go to sketching my graph. Okay, now we draw our axes, label x and y, and we divide, or we put 4 points on my axes. Use a ruler. These points that I found by dividing my period by 4 go on my axes. So I've got pi on 4, pi on 2, 3 pi on 4, and pi. I put in my amplitude. Again, use a ruler. 3, -3. If it helps, draw a dotted line going across. Again, you would use a ruler. Just to show you, I'm going to draw in dotted lines going through those key points. Now we need to fit our basic graph to what we have here. It starts at the top. My next point is on the axis. Then I go down. Then I go back. Then I go up to the top. That is my graph. Join the dots. Curl over at the beginning and end. Try and make it look curvy. And label y equals 3 cos 2x. So you'll see the key part of drawing this is this divide the period by 4. So you can see, if you go back to your basic graph, those key points that I have as dots on my curve. Now I have y equals 4 sine of x on 2. What does my basic sine curve look like? It starts at 0, 0, up and down. What is my amplitude? My amplitude equals 4. I have no vertical translation, so my min is going to be -4 and my max is going to be 4. I then look at my period. Period is 2 pi divided by whatever is in front of the x. So that's going to be divided by half, which is 4 pi. This is when I divide that period by 4. So divide period by 4. I want to know what my scale is on my x-axis. So 4 pi divided by 4 is pi. So I have pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, and 4 pi. I now draw up my axes. Okay, so I have y and I have x, and I put on 1, 2, 3, 4 points on my axes. Pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi. My amplitude is 4, so from 4 to -4. Again, if it helps, draw in lines to give you that max and min, and if you need to, draw in a grid with your x-axis. Now go back to our basic graph. It started at 0, 0. Then it goes up, down, down, up. So you can see on that basic graph those key points. Join the dots. Arrows at either end and label. Let's look at one final one. Y equals -2 sine 3 of x. Now the first thing I see is this negative out the front. That's a reflection in the x-axis. So my basic curve would be normally that, but it's reflected in x-axis. So I actually am going to have it going the other way. Okay. Next number is our amplitude. Our amplitude equals 2. No vertical translation, so my min is going to be -2 and my max is going to be 2. Then I look at the period. Period is a number in front of the variable. So that's 2 pi over 3. I now have to divide that period into 4. So not as straightforward as the others. 2 pi over 3 divided by 4 is 2 pi over 3 times 1 over 4, which is 2 pi over 12, or pi on 6. I can now do my scale on my x-axis. Pi on 6, 2 pi on 6, 3 pi on 6, and 4 pi on 6. Simplify if you can. Pi on 3, pi on 2, 2 pi on 3. Note, this end point should always be your period. I now go and draw my axes. Okay, 4 points. 1, 2, 3, 4. Scale, pi on 6, pi on 3, pi on 2, 2 pi on 3. Remember to label my axes, x and y. My amplitude was 2. Again, if it helps, use a ruler, unlike me, and draw in the dotted lines. From here, look at the curve that you need. These are your key points. Dot, 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 dot. Join the dots. Arrows on either end because we don't have a domain. Y equals -2 sine 3x. Just say you were asked to sketch from 0 to 2 pi. So you're given a domain. That would mean you would get rid of that first arrow because it has to start at 0, 0. And for the rest of the scale, you would look at what you did before. You finished at 4 pi on 6, so you'd go 5 pi on 6, 6 pi on 6, 7 pi on 6, 8 pi on 6, 9 pi on 6, 10 pi on 6, 11 pi on 6, 12 pi on 6. So you would extend your scale to include all of those, and you would just keep going with the pattern of dots.